Hello everyone, it's me again. Today I will recap the movie Venom: Let There Be Carnage. In 1996, at the mental hospital, where the murderer Kasady and a girl with his superpower of controlling sound were being held. After the lights went out, Kasady sent her cloth ring to her. Frances took it and put it on her hand, choking with emotion and saying that because her ability was getting stronger, she would soon be taken to a place that specialized in holding people like her. Kasady was extremely frightened. The police took her away right in front of Kasady's eyes. He could only scream helplessly. On the way, Frances used her ability to create terrible sound waves that caused the young police officer Patrick to bleed from his ear. She jumped up and wanted to grab his gun. Meanwhile, Patrick kicked Frances out of the car. Frances woke up in the hospital room with an injured eye, looking at the cloth ring still on her hand. Outside, a voice welcomed to the new home. A psychologist came to check on Frances. The food delivery staff also had to wear headphones before daring to enter. Frances was locked in a separate glass room. She used her dangerous eyes to look at the staff, then roared like a tiger, causing the food delivery staff to run away in a panic. Frances picked up the newspaper to read, and was shocked to learn that her beloved Kasady was about to be executed. The young police officer Patrick was now a very famous detective. He invited Eddie to negotiate. Although Eddie did not want to have anything to do with the serial killer, Patrick asked to meet Eddie alone. As soon as Patrick turned his back, the cute Venom appeared and wanted to swallow Patrick's head to satisfy his hunger. Eddie had a hard time dragging Venom's head into the bathroom. Venom was angry that Eddie had to interview a normal person, thinking that with his ability, the two of them should go save the world to be worthy. Not knowing that the bathroom next door was occupied, the girl heard two men's voices coming from the wall next to her. She looked over but saw only Eddie's legs. After a while of arguing, Venom quietly walked out. Patrick was surprised but thought that this journalist was schizophrenic. Eddie finally went in to interview the prisoner. Instead of answering his questions, the prisoner mentioned Eddie's work. He said that Eddie's work had not been going well recently. Kasady offered to take Eddie to the top of his career by telling him all his secrets, but in return, Eddie had to write everything he said. The article about murderers was always a hot topic in public opinion. Eddie wondered why he chose him. Kasady said it was because he liked Eddie. But this time Kasady only told Eddie a few obscure things. Right when Eddie was about to leave, Venom wanted him to take a closer look at the drawing on the wall in the room, where Kasady had spent his whole life. Leaving the police station, Patrick was disappointed that Eddie couldn't get any information. Eddie took the hungry Venom away on a moto before Venom chewed the policeman's head off. After returning home, Venom asked for paper and pen, and in a short while, he drew everything he saw on the wall, then drew a house, then a tree. But Venom was still not satisfied. He sat down on a chair, used his hand to draw a location, and searched for it online. When compared, it is indeed this island. The next morning, the police got involved to find the location of the murderer's body. The news quickly spread on TV, and his career skyrocketed. Meanwhile, Patrick was angry that he was taken advantage of. Kasady is said to be executed as there is enough evidence to convict him. Frances, devastated by the knowledge that her lover was about to be executed, unleashed a powerful power in her prison cell. That night while Eddie was being honored, Venom suggested that they could join in solving the case. Eddie would be the savior and Venom would have a bad guy to chew on. Eddie didn't agree, so Venom sulked and wanted to tear the house apart. Venom wanted to eat bad guys. He was tired of eating these feathered chickens. Venom also needed to be free to feel the wind in his hair. Venom was extremely dissatisfied, so an argument broke out. Venom launched a strong attack and then returned to his original form, causing Eddie to fall flat on his face on the floor. Eddie painfully stood up and reminded of their agreement that Venom had to follow his rules if Venom was living on his side. The previous headless cases had not been solved yet. If they ate people again, both of them would be noticed by the FBI and might even be handcuffed to Area 51. When they couldn't fight back, Venom typed randomly on the computer, not letting Eddie work, so Eddie reluctantly indulged his best friend. Eddie went to Mrs. Chen's store to find some bad guys to eat to ease his hunger. But today they hadn't arrived yet. Venom suggested that he could eat Mrs. Chen temporarily. Of course Eddie didn't allow it, so Plan B was carried out: eat chicken or starve to death. Venom proved his strength by flying and jumping on buildings, playing happily, then discovered that there were bad guys below. The robber was trying to snatch a lady's handbag, but he was too weak and was punched several times by the lady. The robber wanted to run away. Venom jumped down and grabbed his leg and lifted him up. Just as Venom opened his mouth full of teeth to chew the robber's head, Eddie stopped him. Venom got bored, so he threw the robber into a nearby trash can, then climbed up to the roof and ran as fast as he could to find something else to eat. At this moment, Anne's phone called. Almost dropping the phone below, Venom quickly grabbed it and gave it to Eddie, and apologized for not replying to Eddie's text because she still wanted to calm down from the previous incident, and took the initiative to ask him out to dinner. Eddie was overjoyed. Venom also told him to take this opportunity. The next night, Eddie dressed up nicely and went to their previous meeting place, and was still as beautiful as the day he lost her. Eddie hugged the beauty, thinking that everything would be better. Unexpectedly, he saw the engagement ring on her hand. It turned out that she had made an appointment with Eddie to announce that she was getting married to Dan, a kind doctor. At this time, Venom inside Eddie was even angrier. He kept cursing the doctor, seeing Eddie's strange expression, and asked if Venom was still living with him. But Eddie still lied that Venom was dead, and knew that Venom was still there. She even asked Venom to take care of Eddie for her. Eddie painfully congratulated Anne and left. He drove like crazy on the road. Anyway, with Venom here, he couldn't die even if he wanted to. Venom apologized for not being able to heal his heart. Emotional pain was much more painful, and it lasted forever. Venom advised him to be strong and accept the truth. In order to make his friend happy, Venom helped Eddie cook breakfast the next day. Put milk in the blender, chop mushrooms and fry eggs, add tomatoes, add potatoes. Now Eddie just had to sit at the table and wait. During the wait, Venom reached downstairs and brought back a stack of letters. Eddie received a letter from the killer Kasady. Kasady wanted to see Eddie one last time, along with a story about his life. Kasady was a near-death child. He was resuscitated when he was born, then lived in a family of domestic violence. He pushed his grandmother down the stairs with his own hands, then put a hair dryer in his mother's bathtub, finally got a painful beating from his father, and sent to an orphanage. Here he was beaten by the children who came before him. It was Francis who saved him, and became the light of his life. Kasady blamed Eddie for all the mistakes in his death. After listening, Venom said that it wasn't Eddie's fault, so he didn't need to go there. But Eddie wanted to visit Kasady one last time. After a while, Venom brought out 2 horrible meals, and thoughtfully sprayed ketchup on him. The next day, the two went to prison, which was like a buffet to Venom. Venom kept thinking about chewing a few heads. Eddie went to see Kasady. Kasady said he would be haunted by killing Kasady. Eddie said Kasady hadn't told him anything yet. He found out himself. Kasady didn't care. He said he used to consider Eddie family, because they both had an alcoholic father. But Eddie betrayed him. The killer cursed Eddie to have a broken heart, living a lonely life. Then he brought up the matter of his girlfriend and Eddie's mother's death to provoke him. Before Eddie could do anything, Venom grabbed the killer and slammed him against the wall. While Eddie tried to stop Venom, Kasady took the opportunity to bite Eddie's hand. The police came to stop him and took him out. Kasady was shocked to realize that what was in Eddie was not blood. He pulled out a black liquid that seemed to be growing from his mouth. Back home, Venom apologized to Eddie many times, but Eddie was still very angry, because Venom always made a mess of everything. Eddie said that he wanted a peaceful life, instead of getting involved with the alien. Venom angrily got out and argued, saying that he was lucky to be chosen by Venom. Eddie thought that he was kind to Venom, because Venom was just a loser and ran away from his planet, only fit to clean his toilet. Venom was offended and hit Eddie on the nose, then took the opportunity to hit him again. Eddie got angry and punched Venom in the head. The fight began. Venom dragged him and hit him against the refrigerator, and then threw him into the bookcase, and even wanted to kick Eddie out of the house while this was Eddie's house. Venom angrily threw everything in the house onto the street, causing the neighbors to complain and call the police. Venom even threw Eddie's favorite expensive TV. Eddie called for Venom to go solo, but he didn't hit anything. Venom wrapped his neck around Eddie. Eddie grabbed Venom's tongue and hit him hard. But the one who landed in pain was Eddie. Eddie took his helmet and hit Venom hard in the face, breaking all of Venom's teeth. It quickly grew new teeth. Venom threw Eddie onto the ceiling. Eddie grabbed the power source, causing Venom electrocuted. Venom flew down the road and entered the man below. Eddie was lying down recovering when he heard a loud noise downstairs. It was Venom destroying his motorcycle. Eddie cried out to Venom in pain, wishing he had never met Venom. Venom entered another person, leaving a curse finger mark, and then disappeared. That same night was Kasady's execution day. Before being injected with poison, Kasady was allowed to say his last words. But instead of being afraid, he shouted to enjoy the show. Outside, the victims' families were watching the perpetrator pay his dues. The poison was gradually injected into him. His body convulsed continuously. But strangely, the poison was pushed out of him. Dozens of red flesh fibers grew all over his body. In an instant, the cell exploded. From inside the hand, sharp red nails extended. He transformed into a giant monster. When he was about to chew the Corrigan's head, the alarm went off, making him uncomfortable. The monster stepped out of the cell. The police continuously fired at him. But that body fired bullets back, killing everyone. He swaggered through the prison, opening the door to free the prisoners. He jumped up the hallways and dragged the prison guards to the ground. Prisoners everywhere rushed out to clap and celebrate. This monster spun around, creating a tornado, pulling Corrigan in and chewing his head. Then the monster jumped out, transformed back into a human, and sang happily. The next morning, Eddie was sad and cleaned up the rubble, rebuilt the cabinets, and reglued the ceiling, and packed up the chocolate wrappers. Then he took the 2 chickens and released them into the park. Meanwhile, Venom was also painful, and he just sat there dumbfounded on top of the tower all night. Eddie stayed home and listened to the news, and received the terrifying news that Kasady had escaped and was hunting people. At this time, someone knocked on the door outside, and he anxiously went out and saw Patrick. Patrick said he didn't know how Kasady escaped, but Eddie was the last person to talk to him. So did Eddie know anything about Kasady's escape plan? Eddie really didn't know anything. Only then did Patrick advise him to hide, because there was a high chance that Kasady would come looking for him. Without Venom, Eddie was scared. He listened to his interviews and letters again, wanting to find some information in them. Venom was busy having fun. He criticized this drunk young man for being weak. Then he possessed a girl and revealed his true form. This was a costume party that made everyone see Venom as impressive, competing to hug him and take pictures together. Venom proudly broke out of his Eddie shell. Kasady went into a small alley and killed someone quickly, then put on the victim's elegant clothes. He walked around the street. He saw a car he liked, jumped in and stole it. Kasady looked in the mirror and saw the monster Carnage. Carnage said that if he could kill his creator, he could become invincible. Kasady agreed, but first, he needed to find something he had lost. Carnage said he would help. Seeing the white car next to him as an eyesore, Kasady threw it into the river. At the nightclub, Venom put on a bracelet and went on stage, grabbed the microphone from a girl, and declared that Eddie was wrong. With this eloquent speech, he became an idol of the youth. Venom says, "Don't be cruel to aliens. We could all live together on this stone ball, becoming the people we want to be." But soon, the body ran out of energy and fell into a corner. Venom wished Eddie could see himself respected by everyone. At the same time, Eddie was groping his way to the abandoned orphanage. He found the tree he saw in the drawing. It was written that Kasady loved Frances. He immediately called Patrick, saying that finding someone named Frances might help him find where Kasady would go. But Patrick said she was dead, and that he had shot her himself. Now thinking back to that night, his ears still hurt. Kasady drove to the store, without saying anything, beat the employee to death, and asked Carnage to search Google for his lover's location. Meanwhile, the doctor came to tease Frances, telling her that Kasady was causing chaos in the city, but it would be a long time before he could find this place. Unexpectedly, the message on the pager now appeared, "I'm right here." She looked at Kasady standing inside in horror. He stretched out his tentacles and strangled her to death. Frances was happy to see her lover again. He introduced her to his friend Carnage. Frances was not afraid at all. Looking at the dozens of red tentacles that had just reached out, she felt that her lover was really cool and hot. As soon as the glass cage was crushed by Carnage, the guards and doctors outside ran in. He transformed into Carnage hiding on the ceiling, spread out his tentacles to kill everyone, then easily broke the roof and rushed out. Kasady understood the psychology of choosing the car that his lover loved the most. Frances happily drove backwards, turned the wheel sharply and leave. Carnage wrapped around the car and pulled all three into space. Frances gave her lover a kiss of encouragement. Then Kasady merged with Carnage. He used his tentacles to pull each police car up and smash it. He also had an arsenal of weapons that cut iron like mud. Helicopters also flew over and continuously fired at him. Carnage took the car to block the bullets. Frances got mad and screamed loudly. The sound shattered the glass door. Carnage was also affected and returned to Kasady's original form. The whole car fell down. Kasady told her that Carnage's weakness was sound. Kasady drove out the gate. He pulled down the helicopter, causing an explosion, and ran away. On this side, Venom had trouble with the host and went to the store to ask for help from Mrs. Chin and fell down. Mrs. Chin went to hug him. The police received the report and went to the place where Francis was being held. Everyone was screaming in panic that there was a monster. The laboratory was destroyed. Patrick immediately called Eddie to investigate. He asked why Kasady invited him to watch his execution, and he found out a bunch of strange information, like the Life Foundation's rocket exploding. Eddie was present in every place. He confirmed that Eddie had clues. At this time, Eddie remembered when Kasady bit his hand. So he was the one who caused this. He had to take responsibility. So he asked to call his ex-girlfriend, and immediately went there with her fiancé, and he told her that he was in trouble, and tell him to just tell the police. But that was impossible for Eddie, and thought the denim was still inside Eddie. So she wanted to talk to him. At this point, Eddie had to admit that Venom was no longer here, and he asked her to find Venom for him, and went to Mrs. Chen's house because there was chocolate Venom liked to eat. But Mrs. Chen was always upset because and had broken Eddie's heart, and said that Kasady was also parasitized by aliens, and Eddie really needed Venom's help. Mrs. Chen got angry, said that Eddie said he didn't need Venom. Because of this sulking, and quickly realized that this was Venom. He immediately showed his two characteristic eyes, but still acted spoiled and refused to go back. Until and used her trick to praise him as a hot hero, Venom immediately agreed. After the couple of saboteurs were freed and happily walked out of the fire, they decided to have a wedding party, with Eddie's flesh and Venom's body, and brought Venom to Eddie. Venom immediately rushed out with Eddie. When the police arrived, they only saw a huge hole in the wall. Outside, Venom was sulking with Eddie, forcing him to apologize and beg Venom. Venom refused to forgive him when Eddie spoke softly, and asked him why he yelled at me when Eddie spoke loudly. Finally, with Anne's guidance, Eddie confessed his mistakes and apologized sincerely. After a moment of thinking, Venom jumped in to hug Eddie. Eddie wanted to kiss her, but was rejected by Anne. Eddie told the Anne and Dan to leave immediately, and guide them use fire and sound against the monsters. Then took it out on Dan twice on Anne's behalf. Patrick goes looking for Eddie, but unfortunately meets Kasady. He pulled out his gun, but Kasady immediately turned into Carnage. No matter how many bullets he fired, it was useless. Patrick was captured by him. Francis went to Eddie's house to search, but couldn't find him, only found a ring and a picture of Anne. Anne and Dan immediately moved but still too late. Francis kidnapped Dan and put in the trunk of the car, then threatened Anne to tell where Eddie was, and immediately refused to cooperate and was taken away. Francis gave Dan the address, told Eddie to bring his head there in exchange for Anne. Dan panicked and called Eddie to go to the church. Francis entered the church. Kasady used Patrick as a wedding gift for his lover in front of the priest. At the last step, Venom rushed in. He was aggressively looking for Anne, when he saw the red Carnage and immediately retreated inside. Because the red parasite was very strong, Venom ran away, leaving Eddie scared to death. With his weak body, he would surely die. In the end, Eddie could only promise to feed Venom everything Venom liked before he would come out. The two were about to attack each other when Francis screamed again. Carnage angrily threw her away, making Kasady extremely heartbroken. But he was quickly pulled back by Carnage. Carnage threw dozens of spikes at Venom. Venom quickly escaped and jumped up the wall, then rushed down and punched Carnage, pinning him to the ground. After all, Carnage was still a youngling, so his moves were not as good as Venom's. He punched continuously, knocked Carnage down, and then used his whole body to press down on Carnage. But Carnage's strength was his terrifying regeneration. After a few moves, Venom was pinned to the wall. Francis came to kill Patrick, but Carnage told her not to scream too loudly. Patrick took this opportunity to immediately escape and call his teammates, but was quickly chased upstairs by Francis. Down here, Venom had just escaped and was captured again, watching Carnage eat the priest before his helplessness. After a while, Venom kicked him away. From above, Dan poured oil and lit a fire. Francis was about to gouge Patrick's eyes out when she heard Carnage's scream and rush out. Dan ran quickly, but was still caught by Carnage, almost becoming food in his stomach. Luckily, Venom escaped in time and pulled his neck from above. At this time, the clock struck 12, causing the church bell to ring. Both of them immediately fell down and returned to human form. Kasady stood up and smashed Eddie's head into the iron bar and punched him, then transformed into Carnage and threw Eddie away. Venom appeared and grabbed him. Then both of them transformed and rushed at each other, falling from the sky to the ground. The church bell rang again. Kasady used a plastic bag to cover Eddie's head. Just as Eddie was about to suffocate, Venom appeared. The two monsters fought again. Venom tried to strangle Carnage. He swung his tentacles high up. Both were thrown away. Carnage used his tentacles to hold them back. Venom fell straight to the brick floor. After standing up, Carnage threw Venom down from above, causing him to fall so hard that he couldn't get up. Kasady picked up a hammer and hit Eddie a few times. At this time, Francis wrapped a chain around Patrick's neck and kicked him down below. Kasady wanted to kill, and in front of Eddie, he transformed into Carnage, used his tentacles to drag him out of the coffin and climbed up. Dan ran over to help Venom from the rubble. But unexpectedly, when Carnage arrived at the tower, Francis told him to stop. He angrily strangled Francis while Kasady was helpless. Venom realized that they weren't symbiotic, they opposed each other, and he and Eddie were a couple. Venom tried to lift the pile of cement, struggling to climb up the tall tower. After sitting down to rest, he silently climbed from behind. The moment Carnage opened his mouth, he jumped over with an iron bar and stabbed Carnage's in the head. Carnage let go of and in pain. Venom flew down to hell but was ambushed by the other guy behind, cutting off Venom's legs and then stabbed Venom in the back, he pushing both of them down the clock tower. Venom clung inside, brought him down. Dan caught her. Then Venom climbed up and was stabbed many times. He couldn't bear it and fell to the floor. At this time, Francis wasn't dead yet. She got up from behind, and when saw her about to scream, Venom pushed she to the ground. While falling, Francis screamed loudly in hatred, causing the entire tower to explode. The bell also fell and crushed her to death. Outside, Venom landed safely with the help of Anne and Dan. On the contrary, Carnage falls down and turns into a pile of meat. Before he could crawl to Kasady, Venom pulled him up and chewed him up. Venom walked up and grabbed the killer's neck. He said he only wanted one thing. Eddie asked what he wanted. He said he wanted to be friends with Eddie. Eddie could only apologize. Venom then had a sumptuous dinner as he wished. The police were coming outside. The three of them fled the scene. Eddie said goodbye to Anne, and this time he sincerely blessed her and Dan. At this time on the roof, Patrick was not dead. His eyes changed color, and he muttered monster. Eddie went to the park where the two chickens were released. He thought the two of them should start their days of running away together. The first place was to watch the sunset on a strange beach. The two of them exchanged words of comfort and encouragement and lived happily. In the after-credit scene of Part 3, Venom showed Eddie a small part of the knowledge contained in his head, which made the two of them move to a strange resort. Here, Venom saw Spider-Man on TV very deliciously. Will Part 3 reveal Venom joining the Avengers superheroes to protect this planet? I am really curious about that. The movie ends here. Although it is not as special as everyone expected, this part brings a lot of laughter, as well as an interesting symbiosis between humans and extraterrestrials. Both of them eventually accept to put aside their egos to become an indispensable part of each other. Thank you very much for your support so that the channel can develop as it is today. If you find it interesting, please give me a like and a comment about this movie. Especially please subscribe to the channel to follow my recap the movie summaries. See you again, dear friends.